and welcome to episode 118 of A Gamer Looks at 40. Talk about the enormity of time. 118 episodes of this ridiculous show have made its way to the internet. I'm Bill Tucker, and with me is a guest beyond compare. He has joined the show many times. He was one of the original members of the show, and him and I have been doing podcasting stuff for a long time now. Please welcome from Perfect Storming Gaming and from Retro Gaming Guy, the one and only Joe Coiro. What's going on, man?
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a great intro. If I could have you around as a hype man,
Right.
if only like other people in your life, you ever feel that way? Like if my kids appreciated me as much as you, like I feel like
I can hang out with you at all times, be at the deli counter when you come up, be like, now stepping up to the deli counter, number 58 on the ticket, the one and only, looking for some mortadell, Joe Coiro.
That's good, Phil. It's good. Yeah.
So
everyone needs a hype. Who was the guy that introduced Carson? I forget his name.
Was Ed Sullivan, right?
Ed Sullivan, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Johnny.
Yes, Johnny. So we are here not to talk about Italian cold cuts, but to talk about Halloween. It is right around the corner as of this recording and as of this release as well. And unlike a lot of shows that I know and adore and care for, I don't feel like I need to do seasonal shows. I'm like, if I have something, I'll do something. If I don't, I don't. I don't like to force it, and because if I don't have something for it, I won't. But this time around, I'm like, you know what? I'd like to do something. I could use another week to get the Final Fantasy VII stuff done. Everyone's in a festive Halloween mood this week, so let's just talk to Joey about Halloween and our memories.
Actually, one of my favorite. Yeah. I hate saying this because I'm Christian and I love Christmas, obviously. And when you tell people Halloween's your favorite holiday, you come off like a pagan. They're like, right. Oh yeah, that's if you're not 12 years old, it's kind of like weird, but it is. It is. It's one of my. I just love it. It's a great reasoning and excuse. To be childlike, not to get into the dark cultures and witchcraft and all that stuff, but just to be a kid and just, dress up and pretend that you're not your age and eat a lot of candy. What's better than that? Honestly.
And it's really fun to share with kids. You and I, obviously, you have kids who are now high school age.
Yeah.
My kids are elementary / preschool, but it takes a totally different temperature with kids. I always liked Halloween fine. I was never super duper into it. As a single adult, Halloween was an excuse to just go drinking heavily. That was what Halloween was. It was just it's just an excuse to dress in costumes and drink my face off.
You're right.
But now with the kids, I agree. It's fun to experience it through their lens. And my wife really loves Halloween, so the house is all decorated. We do all the stuff for Halloween. And but I thought we could just talk about Halloween in the old neighborhoods, old Halloween. I did this with my brother a couple of years ago where we kind of just talked about Halloween growing up. And I figured I would get one half of the Perfect Storm team on to talk about.
I love it. I love it. I was just there. I was in Ampere Park. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just there. I was in Ampere Parkway, and it's so flooded with vivid memories. It really is a time capsule when we go back to the old neighborhood. I say the old neighborhood. Can I say the old neighborhood or what it is? Bloomfield, New Jersey.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind.
I say the old neighborhood for you and me, but Bloomfield, New Jersey. Anytime I go back, it's just so vivid, so wonderfully filled with memories, and any opportunity, any chance I get to go back, I certainly relish. But you're right, Bill. There is something about going back this time of year and seeing the foliage and watching the leaves change colors. And people they decorate now. Like I don't remember that. At least growing up. Correct me if I'm wrong. I remember Christmas. Obviously, people decorated. I don't recall people decorating for Halloween.
No,
excuse me.
Nope.
But no, now you'd be pleasantly surprised. There's a lot of houses that do it up pretty good. And I drove by Carteret That I remember. I remember pumpkins, and I remember Mrs. Clark and our teachers decorating. I remember the school decked out for Halloween. But it was awesome. It was awesome, Bill.
Yeah, people's homes, they didn't decorate. The only way you knew what house to go to was the universal, if the light is on, you can ring the bell. If the
That's
light
right.
is off, don't bother. There's no one there. Don't
That's right.
ring. That was the only way you knew. But now you're right. People go all out. We have paper houses in neighborhood, in our neighborhood here in Texas, that go, I mean, more than Christmas. Like
Really?
there was one house in our neighborhood. I don't know if they still do it, but they turn their entire home into this house of horror. Like it literally looks like a horror movie on
Oh, my
their lawn.
goodness.
It's like decapitated heads, and there's things moving and animatronics. And there's this
It's
giant
amazing.
walkway, and there's somebody running around with half a head on his shoulders, scaring the kids. It's like it's insane. It's insane what these people do. But yeah, no, Halloween decorations rival the Christmas. My
Yes.
wife has a set of spooky gates that she made herself, like spooky, like graveyard gates that she made a few years ago that we have in our front yard, and there's a few tombstones and some lights, and so we have a whole setup going in our end. And if we had unlimited time, we would really go all out, but we don't live on a major thoroughfare, so
Sure.
honestly, who would see it? Let's be honest. People who go all out usually live on well-traveled roads, right? And a lot of people driving by. You know, we're on a cul-de-sac. There's not much foot traffic in our neighborhood. So let's be honest. Who are we doing this for, really?
No, it's for the kids. It's for Gwen. And that is what I really remember most. My life was on 3 streets. I mean I mean, my best friend lived on the same street as me, Bill. You know this, Bill. My grandparents lived on 16th Street too. The other set of grandparents I had lived on 15th Street in Stolento's apartment right near Bruno's. Your whole life was on 3 streets. And then we would go to school. We would go to the parade. I just saw this recently, a picture of you and me. You're Pee Wee Herman, and I think I'm Dracula. I'm some sort of a vampire. And it just got so wonderful memories. It just filled me with all endorphins and serotonin. I was a kid again. But we would go to the parade. They would parade us around, and our parents would take pictures. It was usually half a day, and we'd get out, and then Mom and Dad would take me. We'd have to see their family, right? Like, come on, we got to go see Grandpa and Grandma. You know, they would want to take the kids to see their parents. Now, as a parent, you understand that, you realize it. So I would trick or treat, and again, this was all just on 3 streets. I would go to 15th Street to see one set of grandparents, and I would go back 16th Street to see the other set of grandparents, and we would have Nikki there and Dave and Muldoon. This could be a whole episode also, the colorfulness, if you call it that, of our neighborhood, Bill and I. It's just, it was
so
really,
great.
They could have made a movie out of it. Is it just me?
No, I talk about this a lot. We're gonna go all over the place. This is going to be an all over the place episode, but I'm fine with that. Which is great. We had such a colorful neighborhood. I tell people here in Texas about just the people I used to work with my first job at the deli, in the supermarket deli, about the characters,
Incredible.
You could literally write a book about just the people I worked with in the deli. It was insane. It's just that nature of like northern New Jersey.
Yes,
is such a, not this is gonna sound corny, but it's like a tapestry almost of different personalities and
you know
people.
what? That's a great word. No, it's not corny at all. Yeah, and it's great word.
And there's so much variety. Like every house had different types of people there.
Sure.
It was a real, melting pot, as they call it. And it was great for that. Yeah. So you're 100, it was all these characters and a neighborhood of strong personalities. Like everyone had strong personalities.
It was 16th and 15th Street. And, as a kid, then I would want to do one more. Come on, Mom. One more. And we would go to Ampere Parkway usually. There was great houses there. And, your parents are with you. It's not like we were by ourselves.
Right.
We would ring the doorbell, and right behind you was Mom or Dad, or both.
Right.
I think we went one time, you, me, and Dave. I think it was you, me, Dave, and Paul Willie one time.
Yeah.
And then it was just you and me one year. It was 87, 88. In 89, because I moved in 90. Yeah, and it was those were some of the best years of my life. I know that sounds cliche, but
No.
it's true.
There's some real formative memories there. I love how you brought up the Halloween parade at school.
You remember
They still do it. They still do the Halloween parade.
Yeah.
Hey, parents, everyone leave work. Just leave work, and we'll all gather around
no commitments. Yeah, and if you don't, you're a bad parent.
You have nothing else better to do at 2:00 in the afternoon. Let's all gather in the playground. Now, mind you, of course, here in Texas, it's still 90 degrees out as of this recording, October 26th. It's still 90 today. So let's go all into the parking lot, and we'll watch the kids walk around in a circle wearing the costumes you bought for them. These are the things you bought, and you get to now have this weird, I don't know, a weird costume show contest where it can be like, man, my kid's Spider-Man costume looked like garbage compared to the kid down the street. Dang,
and this is the 80s, so all our costumes look like garbage.
Everything
like some pictures of 80s. Yeah,
oh,
it's true.
I know that Pee Wee Herman costume very well. I had a plastic mask. I don't know if it was plastic or not. It was probably made of, I don't know. It was probably made of asbestos. This asbestos mask that was a Pee Wee Herman face. And then, of course, the gray suit with the red tie and everything else.
Oh, my goodness.
But I'm talking about now, though. It is like, all it is yeah, I know. I got the kid out the door this morning. And then, of course, I got the kid out the door. Keyword is this morning. By 2:00 in the afternoon, this costume is now in tatters and ribbons. And his hair is all messed. Everything mangled. It's just like a shell of the perfection that I left the house with. It's now just 6 hours of him running around with his friends, eating candy at school. It's that I like that. I had that. There's and then of course we have now the philosophy, and this is kind of again, going back and forth. We had traditional trick-or-treating when we were kids. We went to doors, we rang the bell.
Yes.
It was luck of the draw. You just hope for the best, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays we have trunk or treats. Have you your kids are older, so maybe you are past the age of trunk or treats? Do you know what this is?
I know exactly what it is.
Okay.
The advent of it came, at least here in Jersey, at the dawn of COVID. And that was 2018, 2019, again, normal, quote unquote normal. And then 2020, it was, we were still underground at the time, but how can we give back to the kids? We don't want to take it away from the kids. So what can we do? And it was a group of parents that got their cars together in a circle. And it's like, okay, go to the high school. There's going to be a bunch of cars there, and in their trunks are going to be candy. When my wife told me this, I said, this is not, I said, this is an SNL skit you saw last night? She's like, no, Joe, this is real. This is real. I go, that's impossible. She's like, yeah, I'm telling you. I'm like, why? She's like, germs, I guess. I said, germs?
Germs.
What's more schifoso than the back of a trunk in a car? What are you talking about, germs? What does that mean? That's an oxymoron. Where are we going? Is it sterile? It's it's a trunk. What are you going to get? They're going to pick up the Reese's Pieces next to the jack? what the jumper cables? This is a joke, you're telling me, right? So we did it. We did it. I think 2 years. I think 2020 and 2021. Yeah. I think it was two. They still do this ritual, Bill. They still do it now to this day.
They do.
She told me maybe last year. I'm like, COVID's over. She's like, no. It's like people gather. I can only imagine who gets. I'm picturing the bushwhackers walking. Like who can gather this anymore? It didn't make sense at the time. It makes less sense now. It's crazy.
I don't have as visceral reaction to this as you. We have not. It's a very church thing to do. Okay. Church has been doing this for way before COVID. It's because and for kids' safety and everything else. I like the traditional trick or treating. I like just going to houses and bothering people. I think that's fun. And there's still a lot of that, but the trunk or treats are a legit thing. We did it during COVID, just like everybody else. And we participated in one. We did not dress up a trunk. Some people really went all out and really made these like elaborate little displays out of the back of their cars. It was neat. It was fine. But
Yeah.
the reason that came to mind, I was reading an article this morning actually about someone bemoaning an opinion piece, someone bemoaning trunk or treats, and I'm like,
Oh God.
it's yeah, it was very sarcastic, very kind of like look at me, too cool for the room article. But I just thought, like, does Joey know about this? Because again, your kids are older, so maybe they were out of trick or treating by then, but I guess not.
That was at the twilight of their run. You know, they were kind of forcing it. Even now, like they're not dressing up.
Yeah.
I asked Nicholas, he's in high school. I asked Andrew, he said, Dad, I'm turning 17. I'm not dressing up. I go, it's over. He's like, it's over, Dad. Yeah. I says, okay, all right.
Good. He's like, I'm applying for colleges. I'm not going to pretend to be the mummy now. I tried to get into.
Meanwhile, I'm still dressing up as Sting. So
it comes around the other way. That's exactly what happens. It comes around the other way though, because again, this is the season for your kids. I was the exact same way when I was in high school. I probably dressed up once in my 4 years of high school. I dressed up as Billy Corgan one year. And I just because, and then I didn't really do it. I dated a couple of people who were really into Halloween, so we dressed up for different parties. But then it became, as an adult, more of just like, again, hey, let's put on a costume and drink heavily. Like that's really what it became. That was the fun of it.
Yeah.
My sister and her brother and my brother-in-law Pete, the great Pete Harney that we all should all know from the show, they are really into Halloween. They dress up every year and always have. They've never stopped. They never had that lull. But I definitely had that lull. I had that lull. I was like, I'm not dressing up for Halloween. And then in college, there's a few, again, dress up for whatever reason. Yeah, I find that interesting. But you're right. There is that lull when you're a teenager where it's like, no, I'm not gonna trick or treat now. I'm trying to get into Rutgers. What do you want from me? I'm not gonna. What am I be
trick or treating? They were done after that. My kids, they would come home and basically have their candy and watch television. To them, Halloween was basically over at 6, but not for me. It wasn't. At least when I was a kid. So yeah, we're going all over the place. We had the parade. School was done. We would trick or treat. 15th Street, 16th Street, Ampere Parkway. And then it'd be about like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. We would trade candy bars. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
We would, what do you got? I'll get the Twix. You give me the Kit Kat. I'll get the, nobody wanted the Malamars. There was always some woman that would give bubble gum or
pennies.
Change. You always got the old lady that would give you pennies. Nobody would want that. It was like, oh, God. Like, what is this? Yeah.
Get yourself a penny candy. What?
Yeah.
It's 1987. There's no such thing. These don't exist anymore, man.
Somebody asked me, like, I think it was my son, like, did you ever get a candied apple? I never got a candied apple. I never. You got one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Never.
Instant disdain for that home. That's just instant disdain for those people. And all this really is you're just paying tribute to neighborhood kids to not egg your house next year. That's all it really is. You're just saying, hey kids, here's some candy. Please don't defile my home with.
I don't remember 16th Street getting crazy on
Mischief
Night. Yeah. Toilet paper. We remember there was always toilet paper, but nothing like eggs.
Nothing eggs.
Nothing violent on Goofy Night. Yeah.
No, nothing. I agree. My wife has a different recollection of. They didn't call it Mischief Night. They called it something else.
Goosey Night.
No. Shoot, it wasn't called Mischief. It was called something else. I don't remember.
There's Boogie Night. There's Devil's Night.
Might have been Devil's Night. It might be Devil's Night. And she has recollections of people like egging and stuff, but that not really in our neighborhood. That wasn't the thing. But anyway, so it's just funny recollecting about it and thinking about how it is now because, you have that. Just going back to that, your kids. They're at the age where they're like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that right now. That's just not. No. But it'll come full circle, and then they'll want to do it again when they get older. That's just how.
Well, now with a new niece, I mean, my brother-in-law had a child, and right. So she was Leia last year. I think she's coming this year to go trick or treating, and you just
nice.
You live with it again, right? So I keep veering. So it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. By now, as a child, Halloween is over. I think my father would put on, the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. So some sort of CBS special was on. Right. Garfield Halloween. We would watch it, not over each other's houses. You'd be at your house, I'd be at my house. But then we would quote lines the next day, whether it was Garfield Halloween, Babes and Bullets, usually something Garfield. And then we would carve the pumpkin. That was a big tradition. And my father would make a jack-o'-lantern. And when you're younger, it was just basically watching Dad, and then the older we got, we would get more involved. We would draw the face, we would clean it out, carve the pumpkin. By 8, 9 o'clock, Mom would take the candy away. That's enough candy, Joseph. You're going to get sick. But yeah, that was rinse repeat Halloween for about 6, 7 years, a staple in my life, and it was wonderful. I have no doubt, to your point, what made it even more wonderful and technicolor and vibrant was that neighborhood, Bill. I truly, truly believe that. I think you'd agree.
No, I agree. And it was always fun to see what people dressed up as and what people went as. And again, just going to these different houses and neighborhoods, it was just a really fun experience. Do you remember, we talked a bit about the actual treats of trick-or-treating. Do you remember the homes that would give like the really good stuff? The really good stuff. There's always the homes who always had like, there was one or two, I said this last time I did this with my brother, I'll do it again here. We would do 2 sets of trick-or-treating. We would do the neighborhood trick-or-treating with you, like around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We all got home from school.
Correct.
Yeah. 4 o'clock, 4 to 5. We were done by 5. And then when we got older, we would actually troop up to West Orange, where my grandfather lived. And we would do the West Orange trick-or-treating.
Oh.
Because the West Orange trick-or-treating, that's where you got the good stuff. Because it was pure socioeconomics. Pure just economics. we grew up in a very, I would say, working class neighborhood, right?
Blue collar. Yeah, absolutely.
Very blue collar area. It was very, and everything was fine. I mean, people did the best they could. But where my grandfather lived, people had more means, and they were much more forthcoming with treats and such. So we would go up to by 6 o'clock or so. We'd be at my grandfather's house. And we would do like another hour trick-or-treating up there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I remember that was when I was getting older, I would start to get over it as I got older, because even though this was now the prime getting time for candy, it was, you're talking about these old costumes. They're all made out of basically burlap. I mean, it was the most unbreathable fabric. It was basically like hardened petroleum. I don't know what these costumes were made out of. Flammable materials.
They were. And they were like they weren't cotton, polyester, maybe a cheap. It's a really good point.
Yeah,
I really
polyester. Nothing breathable. These plastic masks. My face just sweating behind my glasses. I'm trying to pretend to be Pee Wee Herman with no joy in my heart. And my grandfather's house was in a neighborhood that was very hilly. So all these hills going up and down the hills, just grifting for Snickers bars and Reese's peanut butter cuffs. It was just, I remember being like, okay, remember getting to a certain age, and I was probably like 12 or 13, being like, okay, I think this will be it for me. Like, this is it.
Its course. Yeah.
But my brother and sister were much younger. They were 5 and 6 years younger. So they're prime trick or treats time. So I continued trick or treating long after I really
what a good older brother. This is such a heartwarming story.
Oh, always. Anytime we went on like vacations or trips, we do like the Sesame Place, which was in Pennsylvania. Yeah, may still be there actually. And I'm 14 years old at Sesame Place walking on the Big Bird Bridge. And I'm like, I don't want to be here. But my brother and sister, they're 9 and 10, right? Or
Bill,
8 and 9.
This is such a great, man. I hope Lindsay and Bobby got to hear this. What a great brother. Yeah,
but that's so I always skewed a lot younger anyway. And it wasn't a big sacrifice for me. I just learned to enjoy things that younger people liked. It was just, I always skewed that younger anyway. Even like as I got older, I still skewed younger. So
we were the older brothers. Yeah.
So I was very natural for me to still be, again, walking on the Big Bird Bridge or going trick or treating when I was 14, 15. That wasn't bizarre for me. And my son is having that same experience with his sister. My daughter is 4, he's 8, and they play together all the time, and they have a hard time trying to figure out. And I explained to both of them, like, Gwen, you can't expect your big brother to play the 4-year-old games, and Will, you can't expect Gwen to play 8-year-old games. So you guys got to figure it out. Like, what's the happy medium where you guys aren't just arguing and playing different games and just not connecting. But anyway, that's a side diversion. But yeah, no, so I was trick-or-treating until I was probably like 16, 17, 16, probably, well, into high school. Again, probably not active participants, still going around with them, but definitely was still.
But you were there. You were with them, and it was more of a pseudo parent, basically,
Yeah.
supervisor role. You just, and of course, to your point, you made a great point there. It gave us an excuse, even as the older brother. Outside we're trying to be tough and 14, going on 38. We're too cool. We're too cool for this. But deep down, let's be honest, Bill, it gave us an opportunity to be younger than we were. So
Yes. Yeah. And especially in an era where all you want to do is be older, like all you want to do is, get your car and get older and go to college.
Get out of here. Get out of this.
Get out of here. Yeah. And get out of here. Like a Bruce Springsteen song. You still have that opportunity to enjoy the ritual of it, I think is fun. Just wanted to take this opportunity to thank my wonderful patrons for their wonderful patronage. Starting with Lindsay Harney, Philip Becker, Joe Coiro, Terry Kinnair, Greg Seward of the Player One podcast and Generation 16 series of videos, Games with Coffee, The Let's Play Princess, BT Goebbels, Tim Knowles, formerly of The Leadist, Julian of the Stage Select podcast, Seth Sergil of the All End Network, and the one and only fabulous and amazing Pete Harney. If you'd like to join these amazing human beings in their financial support of A Gamer Looks at 40, go to patreon.com/A Gamer Looks at 40. Check out the tiers, and if anything strikes your fancy, by all means, sign up today. And of course, happy Halloween.
Did you get into any movies when you were because that was something like HBO and Showtime, Cinemax, they were still relatively new.
Right.
I don't know how your parents operated, but our rating was strict in my household.
Same.
No. Yeah, you're not watching an R-rated movie, Joseph.
No.
But I would remember, sneaking downstairs because it's Halloween, right? So all of the cable channels had Freddy and Jason and Mike Myers and Chucky on a loop seemingly. And for whatever reason, I remember the horror genre, not just during Halloween. You might confirm this. I remember the horror genre being bigger in the 80s. Was it just me, or do you recall that as well?
It definitely was. I didn't have access to it. We didn't have cable, and we didn't have HBO or any of that. So we only had cable. That we didn't have any of the big channels. We had Nickelodeon and stuff like that, but TV stuff was very well controlled. So I didn't experience a lot of that as a kid. The only stuff I experienced was the stuff my dad liked, which was, he wasn't a big horror person. He liked sci-fi. He was much more of a sci-fi person. Yeah. So I watched, RoboCop when I was way too young. I watched Total Recall when I was way too young, but not horror movies. I never saw a Freddy or a Jason movie until maybe I was well into my 20s, well into it.
Yeah.
Some of those now, as I'm doing other podcasts with other people and we're watching horror movies, I'm I never watched this as a kid. It wasn't available. So for me, horror wasn't a big part of the experience. That was definitely much more later down the road. But you're right though, because horror in the 80s was a renaissance in the 80s. That's where you had Freddy and Jason and Halloween and
Chucky.
All those franchise, Chucky and
Pinhead. You're right.
Yep.
It's a good point. Yeah, there
was definitely a big renaissance with that in that era for sure.
Yeah, and that was more when this was late. I had a bedtime. 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30 if it was something special. But we would go to bed, and everybody would go to bed together in my household, and I remember that. I remember sneaking downstairs and catching something and then being terrified. And
do you have a specific memory of something, one particular movie you saw one Halloween night when no one else was watching?
Oh yeah, Creep Show. To this
Creep Show. Yeah, let's go.
Oh yes. Bill, I'm to this day I'm a fan of the franchise based on what you're saying, based on that experience. It was either 87 or 88. We were done with Halloween, and I think it was bedtime, and we had to go upstairs, and my parents had a television in their bedroom, and I think Dad was downstairs in the basement, probably watching TV. Because you're right when you mention your dad and sci-fi. Television was very big. They weren't video gamers, the baby boomers. So when they had free time, they would have wanted to watch a movie. To them, that was big. I'm watching a movie. I'm watching. They still came from the silver screen movie theaters. Like to them, it was like, yeah, I'm watching a movie in my house. So I think he was in the basement. Mom was probably washing dishes, and yeah, I snuck into. I think that we turned on HBO. Me and my brother, who was basically an infant, 2, 3, and yeah, and Creepshow is on. And Creepshow now, as an adult, when you watch it, it's the most over the top, cheesy. It's basically funny. It's not even scary. It's a funny movie. As an adult, let me preface. But
Right.
when you're 7 years old, that scared that scared the s out of me, Bill. I was yeah. That movie stayed with you for a while. Even like when I was older, 13, 14, I had
Let
PTSD from being 7 watching it.
Leslie Nielsen in an underrated role
Yeah.
in that third story as the maniacal
He's the scorned lover, yeah. And
foreign
Ted
lover. Yeah.
Danson, another great
Yeah.
actor. Oh yeah, the first one, please. Ed Harris,
Yep.
Stephen King, who portrays the farmer.
Yep.
The meteor comes down and he touches it and it grows all over and spreads all over his body. For those that don't know, it's Creepshow's. It pays homage to the scary magazines of the 1940s and 1950s. Growing up in that era, 60s, which is why Stephen King
Right.
and Cesar Romero, they all did the movie and they grew up in that age. So by the time they were in their 30s and 40s, which is when they made Creepshow, they wanted to make an homage to it. Interestingly enough, I searched for the Creepshow magazine. I drove my father crazy after that for years. This is before the internet, don't forget. And
Right.
he would try to reason with me, Joseph, I'm telling you, I don't think this magazine exists. I think it was just for the movie. It's not real. There was no way to search to see if it was real. But when you're a kid, you're like, "Oh, this is so cool! Look at this comic. I got to get it. I got to find a way to get it." But it was outrageous for sure.
I do a podcast called Games My Mom Found with my good friend Mike Alberton, and one of the regular guests on that show is Kenneth Sanity, and he's a huge horror fan, huge
Yeah.
horror connoisseur, and he cites Creepshow as his favorite movie of all time. Of all time.
Yeah.
And he has Creepshow memorabilia, tattoos. So I watched Creepshow for the very first time last year, and I thought it was amazing. I thought this is so wonderful and good. So if you want to check out that episode, I'll link it in the show notes below. I don't remember. It was from last year. Just go to Games My Mom Found and search Creepshow. You'll find me talking about it with Mr. Sanity and Mr. Mike Alberton. But anyway,
incidentally, now they finally made a Creepshow comic. So
there you go.
And 40 years too late. Yeah.
And just last week, because I'm in the midst of doing a Spooktober with Mr. Mike Alberton as well on his show, and I watched Trick or Treat, which is kind of like this generation's Creepshow.
Yes.
Pale comparison.
Yes.
Pale comparison. Not even close.
Correct.
Not even close.
They had one in the 80s called, I don't know if you remember this, Tales from the Dark Side. And that was very scary. I remember I would just get the credits of that and be spooked. It was like, and really nothing in retrospect. Camera in a car just panning the forest, I believe. But it was the accompaniment music, and when you're a child, that's all you need is scary music. You could have a cereal box next to scary music. That's it. Like it was very, very scary. And then in the 90s, they had their own. What was it? Tales from the Crypt. I know that was
Tales
very
from the
big.
Crypt. Yep, that's the one I remember. Yep.
Do you remember that one? Yeah, that was a big one. They had the Crypt Keeper, which was some fictional animatronic that was your host. It was like Vincent Price or something.
Yep.
But no, that was outrageous to me as a kid. I remember, like you said, horror renaissance was huge. I remember Thriller. Thriller came out in the 80s. Yeah, I mean that still holds up today when you watch
Thriller's
Thriller.
great. Thriller's great.
When you think that came out in our generation, we were kids, it's just unbelievable. Really, there was nothing like that before at its time. Well, what about you? Do you have a movie or a show that sticks out in your mind as a kid?
Again, for when it came to scary stuff in our house, we really didn't have a lot of it. We just weren't surrounded by it. You mentioned the specials. I remember the Charlie Brown Halloween, Great Pumpkin. I remember Garfield Halloween, Heathcliff Halloween.
Yes.
We watched a lot of specials.
We saw it all. Yeah.
We were there. So it was really more specials than anything else. We really didn't have a lot of. I wasn't very movie literate until I had the TFT in the Tucker Family Theater. Remember?
Love that. Oh my God,
that's when I really became movie literate. So I really didn't have a lot of those growing up. It was much more specials for me than anything else. Do you remember, Joey? I brought this up on the last episode I did a couple years ago with Bobby, so I'll bring it up with you as well. Do you remember UNICEF boxes?
Oh yeah.
Remember to walk around shilling for UNICEF?
They would give us shilling. That's good.
It's much more charitable than that. I shouldn't put it that bluntly, but I mean, let's be honest.
Well done. Mrs. Clark championed them. She was big on them. I remember her elevator speech basically in the classroom, like, just take it with you. You're going out anyway. You're going out anyway, everybody. You're going out, just, all you got to do after you say trick or treat, just donate to UNICEF. That was big. The school had all different types of programs that they would work with. Book It was one for Pizza Hut. Anyway, I don't want to veer off your question. Yes, no. I remember UNICEF and Carteret really, they really championed those. We would get the box. It was a box that you had to basically build. When you got the box, it looked like a sheet of paper.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, it wasn't three-dimensional. Those that don't know. So then you would build it like you would construct this box, and it would, there was perforated holes to punch out for where the coins would go. And no, that was a big deal. You were supposed to. Your teachers instructed you. Bill, you really jogged so many memories asking that. Thank you so much. Well done. Your teachers would instruct you, or your guidance counselor, whomever, would say, take this with you when you go trick-or-treating, and, and just ask if people want to donate to UNICEF, and if they put a coin in or a quarter in, and then you'd bring it to school the next day. And I forget whom would collect them all the boxes.
The teachers.
What does it stand for? Do you know what the acronym stands for?
No.
I'm putting you on the spot right now. Or you can edit this, or you can.
Yep. Yeah,
I do, Joey.
I could be a responsible broadcaster. I could be a responsible podcaster and be like, of course I do, Joey. Ahem. But here's the problem. I just looked up UNICEF, and it's just the United Nations Children's Fund. But that doesn't match. Where's the I? It doesn't spell UNICEF.
International, maybe international.
I don't think it's an acronym. It's United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, maybe.
You make a good point. Yeah,
that's my guess. But it
isn't an acronym. Maybe you're right.
Listen, Google AI has not revealed what the acronym actually stands for. It just says the United Nations Children's Fund, also known as UNICEF. So, yeah, I think that's your answer.
There you go. Did you do those? Did you do those?
Oh God, totally. Yeah. And we had to wrap them around our neck. It was very, very Charles Dickens, Alms for the Poor. Like, very Dixonian. Like, okay, please, sir, could I have a farthing for the homeless people? It was a very
Oliver
strange,
Twist.
Very Oliver Twist.
I remember that. Yeah.
What was the process of acquiring the Halloween costume when you were a kid? Did your parents make them, or were they store-bought?
A couple my parents made. My mother made a couple. Those were hard times. Bill said it earlier. We were a blue-collar family, both our families. We had 5 kids combined. Both our fathers worked blue collar. Our mothers did not. They were stay-at-home moms. My mother's an Italian immigrant, and we lived in a duplex. So yeah, sometimes those were hard. Those were hard times. And now looking back as an adult, you remember, okay, the time she made the Spider-Man costume, that must have been a harder fiscal year than others. But, sometimes they would make it. I think my grandmother made a costume one time, 84, 85, 86. By 87, by the heart of when we were talking, my formative years, as you put them, my real, vivid memories of my childhood, 87, 88, 89, those 3 years, I was buying them. But there was no I don't recall any specific store, any designated store like there is now, like Party City. I think my mother and father would just go to. It's probably my mother, not my father. She would go to Bamberger's or Caldor or one of those department stores. They would have it. I remember. I would walk with her, and yeah, I remember some sort of a department store. I think it was Bamberger's, and there was a section that they would ward off, and there was the Halloween costumes. And
Yep.
of course, as a child, it's you're keeping up with the Joneses. Like, you knew, oh,
Constantly.
Dave, yeah, he's going to be Freddy. It was trying to always be older, like Bill said, trying to always be edgy. And my mother was not that. She was conservative. So it couldn't be too gory. It couldn't be too scary. What about Steve? I'm my younger brother, Joseph. You'll scare him. So I'm
Mhm.
always dancing on the line of, what I could and couldn't be. I had my father in my corner, but with your father, it was more his generation of horror. So
Right,
it
right.
wasn't Pinhead, Chucky,
No,
Freddy.
no one's going as Pinhead.
Right.
Right.
It was the Mummy. It was
Right. Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Dracula. It was why don't you be this? So it was like as long as I had Dad on my side, he would do a good job coercing. That's why I was Dracula a couple times because at least it was like okay, this is something edgier. This is something like okay, I could be this and still keep my cool card with the kids in Carteret.
Right. Right.
What about you? Did mom made them for you?
We had a mix. We would normally buy our stuff.
Yeah.
We would normally go to, I think it was think Party City was a thing at that time. I seem to remember. If not,
Yeah.
maybe like Caldor or Bradley's or one of those,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
like Kmart would have
Yep.
costumes, like small department stores would
Correct.
have costumes. We would just go get one. A couple of years in a row, I went as a football player because my
Okay.
uncle had a set of shoulder pads and a helmet and a
There
Jets
you go.
jersey.
Yes.
And I would and just to save some money, for about 2 years in a row, I think 2 or 3, I went as a football player because again,
That's
I had
awesome.
this stuff. So there were a few costumes like that, but for the most part, they were just like purchased. Hey, we're going to go here. We're going to buy the Batman. I remember Batman was one year I had a Batman costume, which was cool.
The 89. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
when Batman.
89. I had the
Yeah.
I had the 89 Batman costume, and yes, I was rocking that for sure. That was,
There
and I do
wasn't
remember Pee
any
Herman as well.
kid. That was the year that Batman took over the world. Do you remember that? You couldn't go to church and not see a Batman logo. It was ridiculous.
Everywhere. You couldn't escape it.
Yeah.
Could not escape it. Do you remember trick-or-treating else also in the elements? Because here in Texas, it's hot always. And my children don't understand what it's like. Actually, they do, because we've gone to, my sister now lives like in central Jersey, almost closer to Pennsylvania than New York at this point. And we've been to her house for Halloween a couple of years. We'll actually go there as a family, make that our yearly trip, to the neighborhood for that. And so we go around her neighborhood for trick or treats, and it's actually cold. And my kids don't understand what it's like to be cold and wet and miserable walking around trick or treating. I remember one year I was Batman. I think it was the Batman year. And I remember it being rainy and cold.
Yes.
And I'm dripping, and my cape is dragging on the ground, and it's swollen with water. So I'm just dragging this wet blanket around my neck.
Jeez.
It's just the misery of doing this in the cold and the rain. Usually I talk about pleasant memories on this show, but I don't know why that just came to brain as well in this rambling conversation.
I remember 86, which was a terrible year for me. It was the flood. And that was something that was very vivid. That sticks out in my head. You say, how can you remember that, Joey, at 6 years old? Let me tell you why, because Bill can attest to this. When 16th Street would flood, it would get wet. Do you remember the flooding that 16th Street would? Do you recall that? It would get waist high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a tough year. I had transferred to Carteret in 87. So by '86, I didn't have any friends in Demarest. I mean, none. My mom knew I was miserable. Thank God they transferred me to Carteret for a variety of reasons. But yes, '86, I remember we didn't go trick or treating because the flood was just insane. The whole street flooded. And then by the '90s, I moved to Caldwell in '90, and those are different memories. Those are, like Bill said, is the older brother. I'm also 5 years older than my younger brother. You're kind of going and chaperoning, for lack of a better term, your brother. Still dressed up in '94, '95, but I'm 15, and I was probably a Devils hockey player, like Bill said.
Right.
Yeah, something cool enough where I could just throw on a jersey, be with my younger brother. But yes, to answer your question, I remember one Halloween in particular. I think it was '94, '95, where it poured.
Poured and it's just,
Yep.
but you have to troop on.
Yes.
You have to.
My brother's 10 at the time, so he's at the heart of his, Halloween neuroses. So like I'm gonna and my parents aren't gonna truck it in torrential downpour and a deluge. So we'll go out and we did a couple streets. It's funny you mentioned the warmth. I forget that. So it's warm there now. Yeah. What is the weather normally, I should say, for Texas? What is Texas weather where you are
So
during
Texas
October and November?
October, it can really wildly vary. Right now, it's going to be a high of like 88 today, which is actually very hot even for Texas. Right now, it's 70s would be like the norm, like 78, 80 would be the norm, and lovely, right? But there's been a couple years ago, we went and my son, they had a Halloween little festival at his school when he was going to school, and it was 2 years ago, and we were so hot, it was muggy. And he had on a full ninja costume, and he was just dying, hair matted to his head. Like it's not the crisp, cool fall crunching. I picture like the crunching of fall leaves under my feet and the brisk, cool air hitting my face as I lift in my Pee Wee Herman mask so I can get some ventilation to my skin. None of that here. It's just hot. It's just still hot. That's all I get.
But they're at school though. So what are the evenings? If the high
evening. Evening it'll still be 85, 86.
It will. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So it's definitely a different experience.
One time it snowed. This is going back not when I was a kid. This is going back when my kids, I'm talking about it. I think it was 2014, 2015.
It was 2011 was the year it snowed. I think it was 2011 or 2011. I go ahead and tell your story, but I think I know this one well.
It was snow. Yeah, it was snow on the ground, and my kids were really young. But I was like, this is crazy. I told my wife it was I guess 30s. It must have been right freezing temp. Yeah, it must have been in the 30s for it to snow. Couldn't have been 40s. It must have been in the 30s. Yeah, I remember I said this is crazy. She's like, well, we got to go out. They're kids. We don't want to, gyp them of. I says, no, you're right. But you couldn't even see what their costumes were. They were wearing winter coats. We were literally trick-or-treating with snow on the ground. Yeah. You're still here at the time you're right.
I was in New York. I was in New York because I remember wanting to go to the bars and drink heavily on Halloween. And I was dressed in a costume of some sort. I don't remember what I was going as. And I remember you were
District 9.
That was the year before that I did District 9. The year after was the year I might have gone as Hunter S. Thompson again. And then I recycled that costume the next year when it was not snowing. I remember, no, that might have been Hunter S. Thompson year. That might have been it. Because I probably, again, knowing me in that era, I probably went out at least 3 out of the 5 or 6 days of Halloween there is. I'm sure I was out every night. But one of them, it was snowing. And I remember going to all my usual haunts and no one being there and being really disappointed. There was no one to drink with and party with because it was snowing. And everyone with sense in their heads just said, no, we're going to stay home. Yeah. So, yeah, that was the slightly different Bill in that era.
But there was single to preface, if you're
true
one day listen to this, that was their father
Yes.
was single. He was
Yeah, I was
single. He
single.
was
Right.
living in late 20s. This is the prime of his life. So yeah, it was. And he
A
was
different time.
always. And I could say this, and I'm not just saying this because he's on. He's on with me right now. He was always responsible. You're always responsible, Bill. Always.
Well, I appreciate
I always knew. And my family always knew if I was with you, I was in
that.
good hands.
Yeah,
I
that's
stayed
true.
with this
That's true.
man one time for training in his apartment. This man cooked 3 meals. I got 3 meals from this guy. Yeah. Do you remember that? 7
Oh, of
o'clock in the
course.
morning, Joey, breakfast is ready. Breakfast. I don't even get this from
Breakfast.
my wife. And it was delicious. It was delicious. Amazing.
I made you salmon and bread and everything else. I remember that.
Everything. There was
Yeah, the whole
garlic
thing.
bread. There was a side salad. There was a little dessert. It was amazing. The only time I got lost one time, you lived on 47th Street, or it was some number. And I remember I left, and all Bill said
Some
was,
number.
please don't navigate home. Don't navigate without me. I beg you. So what do? I navigate without him.
Right.
Fangul. I don't need Bill. I got money in my pocket. I know how to hail a cab. Forget it.
Yeah.
Take me to 47th Street. It was some number. I go and I'm like, Bill, I'm ringing your doorbell. You're not answering. You're like, where are you? I'm right here. I'm on 47th Street. And that's when Bill told me, there's another 47th Street in Upper Manhattan, or in New York, Joey. I was on all the way on the other end. Do the story justice. I'm floundering.
I know you're perfect. You almost got it perfectly right. It was 74th Street. I lived on East 74th, all the way east. And mind you, I say east for those of you who know New York or not New York, you have like the Upper East Side is like known as the fanciest area of New York. I lived in the technical Upper East Side, but it was like all the way east, like 10 minutes from a subway, first in New York. Like it was all the way well east, feet dangling in the East River. So I told Joey, yeah, it's good. It's East 7. I guess I may have not been clear and just said 74th. You had a 50-50 shot because there is a West 74th and an East 74th. That cab took you to like to the Jacob Javits Center. Like he took you. It took you to the all the way west. You were on the other side of the island. I remember you calling. I'm ringing your doorbell. I'm like, Joey, I'm waiting for you. But you soon got yourself. Or how did you get? Did you just get another cab and hope for the best?
I said, Bill, you knew me by now. I said, I'm stranded here, and if I try anything else, the wolves will eat me. I'm waiting. You said, wait there. He was so good about it. Wait there. I have to wait another hour. I can't leave work early. I said, fine. He went all the way and got me.
That's literally right. I did get you. I remember
held my hand. And watching Bill navigate through this is like, it's like Obi-Wan. It's especially from Jersey and bumping and get out of the way and New York and hot dogs and peanuts and stand clear of the closing doors, and all of the New York sounds. And you're like, and you're lost. You're from Jersey. You're like, this is nuts. And Bill was unfazed. He was completely just stoic. Just walk quick. Don't look at anybody in the eye. Follow me. And he got me there. And we got back 2 hours later. It was a big hike, but it was unbelievable.
I do now remember walking to meet you on West 74th Street, not East, West 74th.
Yeah.
Just laughing to myself, like, I can't believe he did this. I can't believe he went to the wrong side of the island. And I remember like, all right, let's go. And sure enough, leading you through
You loved watching me just to laugh. I would go visit you, and
it was
you would always stay calm. Yeah. Don't stick out like a sore thumb. I think my first day there, I got an I Heart NY shirt.
You did. You came over to watch the Olympics. I think it was the Olympics. You came over to watch the Olympics in the USA, the Olympic gold medal game at my apartment. And you show up with an I Love New York shirt on, like I saw this by the Port Authority. I'm like, oh my God, I just
this guy's nuts. Yeah. I really give you credit now, looking back at my unmedicated self. You were so patient. Your canonization, it's already in, it's you're gonna be sainted. For those that don't know what that means, he's sainted.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's really funny. How did we get to that? But yeah, those are the days, man. Any last minute thoughts about Halloween, or just those days of running around the neighborhood looking for candy, pretending to be someone you're not, right? Because that's really at the end of the day what it is. There's something really still very fun about that. Any other final thoughts about that as we kind of wrap up the show?
How much I loved it, how much it was just wonderful and such an organized chaos, and concerns here and there that your parents would fill you. Watch the cars, don't get hit by, don't get kidnapped. That was big in the 80s.
Yeah.
Watch
make sure you check your candy.
Check your candy. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, needles and candy. I don't know what that.
Razor blades.
Razor blades. Something. Nothing crazy. Thank God ever happened to us. But just your whole world, at least for me, was on 3 streets. I mean, literally. I mean, we got the candy at the corner store across from Carteret. Our whole world was literally on 3 streets. And you know what? I absolutely loved it. That's my closing comments. I wouldn't have traded my childhood, our childhood, for anyone else's in the world.
Nope. 1,000%. I 100% agree. I wouldn't trade it for anything. 100% agree. My friend, thank you so much for joining me on this rambling and wild expose. If you enjoyed this episode, there are a whole bunch more in the hopper that you can just go to right now and check out. So please do. If you want to hear my brother and I talking about our old days growing up in Jersey, watching horror movies and going trick-or-treating, it's a very different episode than this, actually. I thought we'd be repeating ourselves, but we really don't. So it's episode 50-something. I'll make sure I link it in the show notes below. Be sure to check that out as a companion piece to this episode. Thanks, as always, to Kev and Pete Harney for doing all of the interview editing on the podcast. Thank you to my patrons for being exceptional patrons, and you, Joey, as well. You recently joined the Patreon family, so thank you for that. And I want to thank you for listening to this edition of A Gamer Looks at 40. And until next time, just be kind to yourselves and each other. Have a good Halloween, all.